Oh, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Crypto 101 podcast. I'm your co-host, Bryce, not joined today by my better half, Mr. Brendan Veeman. No, he had some obligations pop up last minute. He could not join us. But hey, I would hate to be him because he's missing out on what's going to be an incredible conversation about DePIN, which is decentralized physical infrastructure. Although DFIN would also be a pretty cool name for it, DFIN, physical infrastructure. But no, DPIN and everything that has to do with decentralized compute, graphics processing, and so much more. I'm joined today by Kyle Okamoto, who's the CTO of Aethir, joining us today at the Crypto 101 podcast. Kyle, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Bryce. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Likewise, I'm very excited. Look, you've got an incredible background before you were diving into crypto full time in the enterprise world, places like Ericsson, and I just think that from our standpoint, we look to guys like you who've built industries in the past. You're coming over now to this newer industry, which is still learning and getting a foundation, and you're building the foundations here. Kind of what are the learnings that you're going to take from building Web 2 and apply here to Web 3?
Yeah, spending a lot of time in hyperscale infrastructure in the past in a traditional centralized Web 2 fashion, I've seen firsthand for 20 plus years all the problems with it, right? The lack of availability, the discrimination against socioeconomic sectors, this discrimination against geographic regions of the world, the lack of accessibility for innovation, the high barriers of entry to ideate and create new things and make things very easy to experiment. So taking a lot of those lessons learned from 20 years of pain and getting a chance to do things the right way for longevity and scalability is super exciting, right? We've been messing around with blockchain for a long time now, and I've had the pleasure of getting involved in several different Web3 projects, from media streaming to data processing, right? But I think with DePIN, it's a great opportunity to democratize access to one of the world's most precious resources, right? Compute, and something that powers everybody's lives every day, whether they realize it or not. And so I think that our mission and vision of really exposing that access and making it easy and affordable, helps me sleep at night, but, also is really the guiding light on why Aethir exists and why we do what we do.
Totally. And would you say Aethir is, would you say it's almost like a decentralized platform similar to like a decentralized AT&T or a decentralized Verizon? Does it kind of facilitate those same kinds of connections, or is it kind of trying to disintermediate somebody else along the line?
Yeah, that's a good question. Ultimately, our, like you said, decentralized physical infrastructure network is really utilized to democratize access and distribute the ownership of physical infrastructure, specifically GPU-based compute, to solve real-world problems, right? Whether that's finance or healthcare or energy or specifically AI and gaming. And it's really like an aggregation of enterprise-grade GPU compute clusters around the world. What that means is that the community are the ones contributing the physical infrastructure. And the community is also monitoring and enforcing that infrastructure to make sure that we can provide SLAs to customers. They're administering the rewards. Those rewards are staying in the community. So in that sense, think like the typical analogy is like Uber or Airbnb, right? Uber doesn't own any cars, they don't own any drivers, but they facilitate riders and drivers connecting, albeit in a centralized Web 2 fashion. Same thing with VRBO or Airbnb. They don't own the apartments or the villas or the houses, but they're ultimately allowing those community contributing members to access the demand side, right? And so in that sense, some people say marketplaces, some people use, facilitators. Really what we're forming here is an ecosystem, a two-sided ecosystem, or a community of companies that have GPUs that have either idle or underutilized capacity that they want to expose to the community. And then the demand side are developers, enterprises, gaming companies, people like you and I that need to experiment and get access to something that would take them 12 months to wait in line and millions of dollars to purchase, and lots of manpower or people power to figure out how to find space and power and liquid cooling facilities and all the other fun complexities to stand up this infrastructure. Instead, they can get it in a matter of seconds. So Aethir really does facilitate both sides of that ecosystem.
No, that's awesome, and it makes a ton of sense. And are there render farms that are out there right now outside of like the Web3 enabled world? And if so, kind of what are the drawbacks or the positives to using kind of a render farm that might already exist in the Web2 world?
Yeah, so there's definitely Web2 providers out there. I would say that they come with their pros and cons. There's definitely access, and a lot of people talk about the shortages of GPUs in the space. I think NVIDIA just came out and said they're booked up for 12 months on Blackwell, right? And they haven't even really shipped any.
Meaning that their new AI chip that they're going to be selling is already sold out, pre-ordered 12 months, and so
and the people that are getting them are companies that everybody's heard of, right? Tesla, Meta, AWS, et cetera, right? Not you and I, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a significant supply chain issue, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a shortage. I would say rather that the traditional Web2 side of things, when it comes to GPUs, it's really just about an inefficiency, right? When we talk to enterprises that have purchased large amounts of GPU infrastructure from the likes of Dell and HP and Supermicro with NVIDIA chips in them, and we ask them, well, what's your utilization rate on this hardware? Generally, the answer is anywhere between 15 and 25%. So they've bought millions of dollars worth of infrastructure, and they're using a fifth of it.
Are they just hoarding it?
I mean, that is massively inefficient, right? And if you remember, the whole migration to the cloud was because of that exact concept, right? People were buying a bunch of servers back in the day, and they weren't using a lot of them. They could get rid of all that CapEx, move to the cloud, and save a bunch of money. Well, then what happened? They all moved to the cloud, and their costs ended up ballooning. And they said, it's probably cheaper to go back to the old ways of buying. So that kind of yo-yo paradigm in the Web2 world is one of the main drivers of why we exist, right? We solve that problem. We allow customers, enterprise clients to keep up with the latest hardware without having to own it. We allow the community to monetize that underutilized and unused capacity to where they bought too much or they're just not using it correctly. And we can drive up that efficiency, right? So that enterprise that spent tens and tens of millions of dollars on buying a cluster and is only using 20% of it can now get a much better return on their investment because they can monetize much more of that infrastructure than they could before. And that really drives the overall operating costs, or the total cost of ownership rather, down, right? And that savings, that incentive, that reward structure that we've created with Aethir allows enterprises to get access to the same exact amazing hardware that these titans of industry are buying directly from the source at a fraction of the price, right? Because they've already bought it. They've already deployed it. They've already powered it up. They're already operating it. And we're just helping them increase their overall efficiency and ROI on those investments. And that savings can all be passed on to the actual end users, the clients of Aethir, that get access to this amazing, amazing infrastructure to run models, to train things, to run inference, to run VFX, whatever the use cases may be. And that ultimately is one of our main goals, right? So I like that there are inefficiencies in the Web2 world because it's enabled us to expose a lot of that infrastructure at a very affordable rate to clients across both Web2 and Web3.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating, kind of two comments on that is just, it's amazing that, GPUs, they could be used for so many different things, so many different applications. It's not just, if you asked me 10 years ago, graphics processing units or whatever, what are they going to be used for? Video games and rendering animation. And that's it, right? That's all my mind would go to. And now it's like, no, you use GPUs to render, like you said, AI models or camera vision learning stuff. And there's just so many more applications. And guess what? A year from now, there's going to be exponentially more applications for these GPUs and more. So it's a really good business to be in. Selling the pickaxes, if you will, to the miners. It sounds like what you guys are doing, and I'm extremely enthusiastic on it. And there was that, and then there's also the other component about the cost savings that are associated with it. And I'm curious, is there any sort of subsidy that you guys provide in order to make these cost savings occur, perhaps with the token or somewhere in the economics of this? Is there some kind of subsidy that might run out eventually, or any assumptions you guys are making there?
Yeah, sure. So the way we've designed our tokenomics is all centered around a sustainable ecosystem. We are not meant for basic mining, right? We don't want compute to be added to the platform that just sits there and doesn't get used. So we always want to make sure that compute is actually being put to work, whether it's all the different use cases that you mentioned. Gaming is obviously a huge use case for us with the world's largest game and major game titles and hundreds of thousands of gamers every day. But also VFX training, LLM, text to speech, speech to text, text to video is a very, very popular use case now. Mm-hmm. So our GPUs are meant to be working, right? And that's really how we've designed the system. Our main partners are, of course, infrastructure providers around the world that have those GPUs, and they've been allocated 50% of the total token supply, so the majority, as both incentives to bring their GPUs onto the platform, but also rewards to provide that ecosystem with compute. And that means enforcing and administering the platform as a checker node, or establishing yourself as an Aethir edge computing box around the world, where there's 30,000 of those already in production, or providing enterprise-grade H100s or H200s or Blackwells, right? So the majority of our tokenomics are designed over a very long period of time to incentivize that supply, and also to subsidize, to your point, to reward them for doing actual work. So that allows them to offer a very, very cost-competitive price to the clients that want to consume that infrastructure. And then we've also designed an ecosystem fund, or a DAO, and we just actually announced last week that $100 million program is out in production now. And that's grants, that's subsidies to enable companies that couldn't necessarily gain access to that hardware, and they're priced out of that market. But we believe in their innovations and in their visions and in their missions, and we've established appropriate milestones of what success looks like. And we're basically funding those projects with ATH or Aethir token grants or subsidies that we're able to carve out of our total token supply to make sure that anybody can get access to premium grade compute to run the next big use case that's going to improve your life or mine. Right?
Absolutely. And can some of our listeners check it out, and can they go and complete tasks or sign up for the application and use it and kind of earn tokens as well on that end?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're doing a shameless plug, yes. I'm
just genuinely curious. This is
Yeah. So the application process is live on our website, aethir.com. You can submit your applications there. We're handing out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ATH to different projects. There's subsidies available as well. We've got all of our eligibility criteria there, whether you're the next hot AI agent product. I believe, in just a few years from now, everybody will have an AI agent, if not, lots of them. Whether you're a model as a service or AI as a service company, or the next big cloud gaming company that's looking to experiment with different models and innovate in different places, or whether you're a stealth company that just needs a few GPUs to test things out and to try things. And see if you've got that next great idea, but you just don't have the access or the funds to actually launch that next business. So all of those are, applicable use cases, and you can absolutely go to our website and apply for those grants and subsidies. Yes.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. What would you say is kind of maybe the main differences from the main competitors that are out there today? I know just the two main ones that come to mind are Render and Akash. Are there things that you kind of want to highlight for the audience that sets you guys, entirely apart?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first off, we love Render and Akash and IO.net and, Theta. And, there's several DPINs out there that are very, very aligned with our vision and mission of democratizing access to compute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Render, as the name suggests, is incredibly great at rendering. You're not necessarily going to cloud stream a game, an MMORPG game on a flat screen TV. But rendering a static or even dynamic object, great. Yes, it works fantastic there. I would say that without going into specifics on where other platforms may fall short, because they all have their pros and cons, we have taken a unique approach on focusing on enterprise grade compute as our first and foremost focus.
Mm-hmm.
It's much harder. There's a lot of companies out there that are onboarding, MacBook Minis, or you've got a 3-year-old gaming rig in your basement that's got an RTX chip in it. And, go ahead and contribute it, right? But we felt that it was important to offer all companies, Web2 and Web3, an enterprise grade experience backed by 100% SLAs. And we've also felt that it's incredibly important to offer localized clusters. So the concept of I need to run all of my compute and billions, hundreds of billions, or even more parameters of data on a local cluster and have GPUs in that cluster talking to each other across things like InfiniBand. We felt that was a very important use case to be able to solve for AI companies and for gaming companies alike. And so that's been our primary focus and approach, which I would say is a major differentiation. There's companies out there like a CoreWeave or a Lambda, or even the public hyperscale clouds like an AWS or GCP, right? Albeit they're going to be much, much more expensive and much more rigid in how they're going to market. Requiring long-term contracts and large prepayments up front, and dealing with availability issues and things like that. These are higher-end use cases that Aethir really specializes in, right? Premium gaming and LLM training type use cases on the AI side. So that's been one of our largest focuses.
I love it. That's super incredible to really unpack there. And it even shows us a couple of those issues with the Web2 world of just, having to have, get locked into those long contracts, maybe with Aethir. That's not necessary. Big upfront payments, with the Web2 places with maybe Aethir, that's not necessary. It just goes to show you how this model seems to be a lot more flexible and, still retaining a lot of that power. And one of the other things I was kind of curious was just kind of more of a creative exercise, I guess, but just wanting to get your view and paint us a picture of a world where we do have such applications running to democratize. I think you said democratize access to compute. Like, what does that enable? What good in the world does that kind of come with? Is that just we get a lot more games, we get much more visual, better rendering, or is there some other grand end or thing that you like to think about that really drives you?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about from like the enterprise angle, and you talk to the CTOs of the world that I interact with on a regular basis, like I'd say 75, maybe 80% of them are screaming and yelling that they're not investing enough in AI to better run their businesses and cut costs out of their businesses and allow people to focus on much more people-orientated things rather than manual steps that just take up time and laborious tasks or even dangerous tasks that physically endanger people. So I think enterprises are looking to streamline their internal operations, but then much more interesting, how do they innovate and come up with new offerings for their customers? When you're on a plane and you're at the gate and the pilot gets on the phone and says, sorry, we have engine problems and we can't take off. All of those, couple hundred people are sitting on that plane, and what do? They immediately try to pull out their phone and get a new flight, stand in line at the customer service, and they're all disgruntled and mad. Well, why can't an AI agent pop up on their phone and say, hey, sorry, the plane just got canceled. Let me help you rebook. Here's the different options. You can interact with me. You can, curse at me if you really want to, because I'm not a real human being and my feelings aren't going to get hurt, but I'm going to help you right away while you're still sitting in that seat, right? before you've even had to get off the plane, right? So like, how do I create a new offering that's going to help people? And then, just from like a day-to-day perspective, about 85% of the world is using some sort of AI service or AI-powered device every day. And they're awful. Like my wife cannot stand Amazon Alexa, right? And we have it in our house. Yeah, it's horrible, right? And so there's much better models out there, much better services out there that just need a little bit of help, right? They need a little bit of a platform. They need some resource support to get their great technologies out there that are going to really improve people's lives. I strongly believe AI agents, will be a massive, massive focus, and we're already powering several on the platform today. And I think that all of this training is just a necessary, prerequisite to enable those applications and use cases. When you think about students these days in universities, I have two young kids in school. Like their experience is so completely different than yours or mine. In terms of it's just ingrained in everything they're doing, and it gives them a massive leg up that they can then focus on bigger ideas and how do they use those tools and components to really solve real world problems. So like I'm super excited by it. I think the real use cases that are on the platform today, we're constantly highlighting those, and that's why we developed this grant program. Is we want to find those use cases that are going to have impactful, positive, meaningful, contributions to society, right? Because that's our whole model and vision. But yeah, I think we're at the the cliche of the tip of the iceberg here. But exciting times ahead for sure.
Yeah, truly couldn't have said it better. And even just a comment on like sort of the kids learning, with AI now being ever present. Like you can't really escape it. They could just go download ChatGPT and have access to the whole thing. I remember back when I was in middle school and high school, everybody was worried about Google. Like, oh, what if these kids realize that Google could do their research for them, and they're never going to be in the library, and they're never going to actually read these things? And it's like, well, the people who really succeeded and thrived were the ones that didn't learn how to just stick with the old tried and true, but used the new technology and became Google ninjas. And I remember they were these kids that could just find anything, any document, any source, anything in the world, and just learned Google better than anybody. And they, continued to thrive and thrive. And I think the same people, it's almost like cybernetics, right? It's like, it's an extension of us. Like, if you can use that technology, why wouldn't you, right? It makes you more powerful. And so, with the whole AI stuff, sure, people might, become dependent on it a little bit too much and might not be able to do their times tables as well and as quickly as, mom could do back in the 60s or whatever. But they're going to be able to have access to so much information if they could use it in the right way. And so, I think
they cheated with abacuses, then they cheated with calculators, and now they're supported by AI. So I don't think anybody really had an issue with those technological improvements, right? I think that was a blessing, not a curse. So yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, and I'm curious from your standpoint. I mean, you're really working at the cusp of blockchain technology and AI technology, and these are both things that are having regulatory discussions currently. And I'm just curious, since they're so new, are there any regulations particularly that come to bear on your business that are, you kind of wish like, hey, like we need better regulation here on the AI or the crypto stuff? Or where would you kind of direct the regulators if you had their ear?
Ooh, sensitive question. I gotta be careful with that one.
All opinions.
I think that from our perspective, I think we would be naive and wrong if we said that there's a bunch of truly decentralized platforms out there. I think that there's concepts that are decentralized, and potentially sometimes that's the right concepts and the wrong ones. But like just for our own platform, like I would never say from a CTO perspective that we're completely decentralized, right? Like we're using DNS, right? Like to run, internet resolutions. So, all parts of our platform are not decentralized, but the parts that we have really focused on around the business model and the rewards and the transparency and the monitoring and the enforcement, those are obvious things that we want to decentralize. And then the governance as well. And I think if you can show that kind of level of transparency and governance to where you're not a red flag from a regulatory perspective, I think it's great. I think the U.S., especially since I live here in the U.S., I think the U.S. is probably inhibiting innovation and adoption. Like for example, we launched our checker nodes back in February, and there's 91,000 checker nodes in the environment that are looking at all of these GPUs every day, all day, and checking quality levels and telemetry data and things like that. And that's all community run. Meaning Aethir is not policing the system. The system is policing the system in a true community decentralized fashion. But yet we had to restrict U.S. passports from a KYC perspective, right? And that's a huge market. It's a massive market in terms of demand and supply, but yet the Web3 restrictions on the U.S. market scare away quite a bit of innovation and exposure to things like Aethir did not, very intentionally did not expose its checker nodes to the U.S. Now, you can onboard compute as a U.S. company, but that's just simply because you have to spend a ton of time interpreting rules and assessing how rulings might change, and constantly spending the time to follow the regulatory environment, and that just slows people down. It costs money, and it makes people make unnatural decisions for their businesses that they wouldn't have necessarily made if they had more regulatory support and adoption. So, I think generally there's some countries that are much more forward-thinking, and I think some countries that are not. And then, everybody has to kind of be on pins and needles for political elections and, how that might change policy. And it's like, let's just spend time building and creating and innovating and be incredibly transparent and allow the communities to guide the market rather than allow external factors to unnaturally guide the market.
Yeah, no, super well said. And yeah, we're hoping, we're praying that we get some more regulatory clarity day in and day out, both in the AI and the blockchain space. Kind of going back to Aethir, if we kind of take a look at scaling this sort of solution to the masses, is something like Ethereum fit for scaling this sort of technology, or does it require something that's has higher transaction throughput, something like Solana or Sui or Sei, or do you guys kind of roll your own blockchain and not really rely on any other sort of smart contract platform?
Yeah, so we actually started our business on Arbitrum.
Okay.
And it was exactly, for the reasonings that you mentioned, high transactions per second. But, beyond a technical perspective, like the choice of a blockchain should not just be purely on tech, right? It also has to be on, I'll call it the business dynamics. And, one really great thing about Arbitrum is the ecosystem. There are an amazing amount of gaming companies building on Arbitrum. And that's really where Aethir started, right? I mean, we were super blessed and honored to start this company's journey in gaming, virtualizing GPUs on a decentralized model for the world's largest game, and then onboarded several large major AAA titles in the Web2 space, and then several titans in the Web3 space. So that's where we learned and got really great at allocating cloud resources across different workflows to service different client needs. Whether you're playing Monopoly Go or Candy Crush on a mobile device, or Genshin Impact or Honor of Kings on a flat screen TV, you need a very different kind of slice of a GPU cloud. And that's how we started. It was quick, it was easy, it made sense from an ecosystem and a cost and a transaction and a quality perspective. And then as we grew and scaled up, it gave us the opportunity to kind of very deliberately think about how we want to scale out and make appropriate changes to our blockchain. And so we announced that we're actually enabling SOFON, and that's been a really great journey as well. But yeah, I would say to anybody out there thinking about that, it's very appealing to say I want to build my own, right? Because then I can have it my way, and it can meet my evolving needs, because your needs will evolve over time. It's an incredibly dynamic space. I would just caution that there's a right time to build your own blockchain, and there's several wrong times to do that.
Mostly the wrong time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be nice there, but yeah. So, eventually down the line, when you think about what's going to be the bottleneck, have that conversation with your partners, and understand that it's an ecosystem, right? Like, we are all here to help each other and to collaborate with each other on these things. And we've had some fantastic conversations with, obviously Off-Chain Labs and Arbitrum, but also with other players on that blockchain and other players on other blockchains around what's working well and what's not working well. So I would say, pick your head up and look around, scan the room, and make those connections as you're kind of going through that journey, beyond just defaulting to, I need to own this, I need to control this, and I need to have it to be my way. And ultimately weigh the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, no, I'm super hopeful that one day, kind of, it doesn't matter if like you're on Solana or Arbitrum or Ethereum, or it doesn't matter if you're on Bitcoin, like you could just interact and use, like you do the web, like, you're on www. And you could go anywhere. If it's .com, .io, .this and that, you might need to type it in a little differently, but you could still interact with it. And I'm hopeful that one day crypto wallets will get to that standpoint where they abstract away all of the kind of confusing stuff, and you just could go to whichever site, send money to whoever you want, do kind of anything, use whatever application. And I'm hopeful that as the industry matures, it's going to go that direction. Do you kind of see things trending towards that more simple sort of abstracted experience?
I was going to say, it sounds like you need some GPUs to solve that problem. Yeah, I mean, we ultimately love the different, layer 1, layer 2, even layer 3 solutions that are trying to solve that problem. Because while a customer that client that ultimately consumes GPUs from us, they don't have to worry about chains and contracts and crypto in general, right? Like, we can, support companies on a Web2 model. They can pay via PayPal or credit card or traditional wire transfer, or they of course can pay with stablecoin, or of course with our native token, which we prefer. But we've obfuscated that complexity from our clients, because you can't spend all of your time educating people on chains and bridging and all the other fun things that they need to do. And so we've just gone with the principle of make it simple, right? Yeah. And if the industry is not going to make it simple, then we're going to have to make it simple for our customers and clients. But yes, we're working with several different companies that share that same passion and vision, and trying to enable them with resources to help with that, for sure. I think the verifiability is super important. Customers want to know, and providers want to know that things are what they say they are, and that they can trust it. And so, like, we don't want to be a bad actor, right? We want to be, AI for good and GPUs for good. Like, companies need to know that what they're using is actually what it says. And just the same thing, providers want to know that the companies that are using their infrastructure are using it the right way for the right purposes. So I think that verification layer is incredibly important. And that goes beyond the complexities of different chains. It needs to work across different GPU types and different geographies and different applications, and of course across different chains. So I think that's something that the industry really needs to come together on and help solve. And I know that there's some really great consortiums that Aethir is a part of. But I feel like we need more time, attention, and resources on those things.
I love it. And along those same lines, a question I kind of like to ask sometimes is just about like a dream partnership. Like, if there was a partner out there, whether a blockchain or a normal traditional company, I should say, is there kind of like a dream ideal scenario that you could, kind of write up that would, boost you guys from 1 to 10?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I would ultimately say that the X as a service companies that are doing a really good job, whether that's model as a service or agent as a service or AI blanket statement as a service, I think those companies that add the intelligence layer and the verification layer and the application layer on top of infrastructure are matches made in heaven for us.
Nice.
We're not necessarily trying to replicate all of those great businesses, but we're trying to empower them, right? We're trying to give them the resources the foundation that they need to build upon. So, without like naming one and isolating others, I would say at a broad category, like those are the companies out there that I think are pushing the frontier of innovation when it comes to AI and ML. And, they need resources so they can bundle them up with their services that they're exposing to their users. Or they need to expose resources to their users to make it super easy for somebody to come on, grab a model, grab an agent, modify it, adapt it, evolve it, improve it, take something off the shelf and get going, whatever the use case may be. So those partnerships are great because there's collaboration there. They make us smarter in terms of how they want to consume our services. And obviously they're a major distribution channel to reach clients and developers and users that we would never be able to reach. So I think that's a great focus area for us to support the ecosystem. But if I wanted to be a little bit more controversial in your answer, I would say that it would be fantastic if the hyperscale clouds can stop pretending like they care about Web3 and stop looking at Web3 as just another sales industry vertical for them to push the same stuff that they're pushing, and to really think about how they can embrace and adopt some of the principles that this entire ecosystem and community is advocating for, to solve some of those bottlenecks and limitations in their own models that are cutting out a massive amount of innovation. So not to single out any of them because they're all basically the same in their regard.
Who's the hyperscale guys? Who are these clowns?
Like the public clouds, right? In the U.S. it would be like the large three, and there's a couple more around the world. But I would say that traditional model needs to improve.
Yeah, they got to watch their step. This is our territory over here. This is Web3.
No, it's definitely not. Definitely not combative. It's. And like I said before, it's a reason why a lot of these companies are becoming successful is because those models are broken, right? And altruistically, the whole community wins if some of those models can, adopt some of these principles.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I just try and stir the pot, right? As the podcaster, got to get everybody riled up. People are having their morning coffee. They're on their way to work. Got to feel the blood pumping a little bit, but Kyle, we loved it. What's next for Aethir? Something on the horizon, maybe that we didn't discuss, or something that you really want to leave our listeners with as they go about their day? What do you want them to remember and be aware about?
Yeah, well, you already asked about the ecosystem program. Yep. Putting $100 million into that fund is a serious commitment to the ecosystem that we're here to support this and help this community grow. But if I would get an opportunity to leave, in people's minds, like we are only as good as the ecosystem that is contributing, right? There's no Aethir behind the scenes buying boxes and racking and stacking in data centers and cabling and labeling and testing and things like that, right? So we just launched a month ago our New Horizons program, which allows the next wave of infrastructure providers, which we call cloud hosts, to come on board. We had originally onboarded a large tranche of providers to get going, and we closed that off to say we've got a lot of GPUs. We now need to sell into that demand, or into that supply rather. We've done that, and now we're saying it's time to get the next batch. And eventually we will close this New Horizons program and wait until the community that governs Aethir says, okay, let's bring on more supply. Because again, we don't want less than 1% utilization on the platform like some deepins out there, right? It's not about just mining a proof of capacity or idle token. It's about actually putting compute to work. So at a certain point, we will say, great, we now need to pause this program and sell into this demand until it's time to open up the next tranche. But this next tranche is open now, and we are taking applications for that, and we are finding some really great partners that are interested and eager to adopt the model and contribute their underutilized or unused GPUs around the world. So that program is also directly on our homepage, provide compute. We're taking enterprise grade SLA backed compute tier 3, tier 4 data centers around the world to back up, full SLAs for our customers, whether those are gaming clients or AI clients. And so that program is live, and the rewards are incredibly healthy, thanks to the community that's been governing this ship thus far. And eventually that will close. So I would say, jump in on that now if you'd like to contribute and power the GPU cloud of tomorrow.
That sounds incredible. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today. Kyle Okamoto, the CTO of Aethir. And for folks who are watching, go to the show notes. We're going to have all the links to Aethir in the show notes. But Kyle, before we let you go, do you have a Twitter handle, or are you mostly on Discord, or anything that you want to drop for us?
Yeah, we're on everything. All of those are all on our homepage, and you guys can definitely communicate across all of those different channels. Yes,
awesome, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, and everybody at home listening, thank you as well. Come on back, same time, same place next week. We'll have some more great guests for you. Take care.